in a vacuum. It didn't come to the fore by osmosis. This basic freedom is deeply rooted in our democracy, starting with the colonists' fear of the king's writs of assistance. It's the Fourth Amendment. It's not one of the Reconstruction Amendments like the 13th and 14th. It's the Fourth Amendment that the colonists paid attention to. And here we see an erosion through the least popular among us to water back Fourth Amendment rights of all New York City citizens. I submit to you, if you become complacent instead of becoming vigilant, you will see the day when all of you will be less free by your acquiescence and your lackadaisical attitude about the polarization. It's the homeless, not me. It's the poor, not me. And once you allow the New York City Police Department to exceed their duty and act as legislators, enacting their own law, and act as judiciary, interpreting their own law, their function in our society is law enforcement. They enforce the laws that our duly elected legislators have enacted and that the judiciary has contemplated and said is constitutionally sound. So when you take Terry v. Ohio and you let the police subvert them, and Terry v. Ohio says in only an exigent, E-X-I-G-E-N-T, exigent, emergency situation, when a reasonable, prudent police officer, based on observation and experience, thinks that the public is in jeopardy, a crime has been committed or is about to be committed, then that officer can act with less than probable cause as the map mandate dictated and act on reasonable suspicion. But it doesn't say on a whim. It doesn't say racially profile. It doesn't say fill your quota that your precinct commander gave you. It said a prudent police officer based on observation and reasonable suspicion. So we don't need any new criteria. We need to say, hell no, we won't go. We won't go where? We won't go beyond the constitutional mandate. We are a nation of law. And there's a reason why we have separation of powers. So if our legislature gives us a law, and if our judiciary sanctions that law, then our public service that we pay who are law enforcement cannot exceed the authority of the judiciary and the legislature. Otherwise, all of America is headed toward a police state. Thank you.
And our last speaker is Michelle Fay, the Executive Director of the Immigrant Defense Project, which promotes fundamental fairness for immigrants accused and convicted of crimes. Ms. Fay focuses her substantive work on community education and policy initiatives, including by designing and implementing educational programs about criminal immigration issues, providing accessible analyses of legislative proposals, and challenging deportation programs. She co-led the campaign to suspend secure communities in New York in 2012. Thank you for that. Michelle's presentation will focus on secure communities, where and how immigrants get targeted for deportation through the criminal justice system, and ways immigrants can protect their rights.
So I'm going to stand for a few reasons. One is that I'm going last, so I'm sure everybody's getting a little bit more tired. Two, I'm a little bit vertically challenged, so maybe this helps. with focusing, and also I'm a little bit pregnant, so it helps me to just kind of move around a little bit. Antes de comenzar, me llamo Michelle y soy directora del proyecto de defensa al inmigrante. Yo tengo entendido que todos aquí entienden inglés, pero si hay compañeros aquí que prefieren hablar en español, si tienen preguntas, podemos hablar en español también. I came into this work, as Michelle had said, I kind of come from the perspective of immigrants who have actually been accused and convicted of crimes. But I come into this work actually from years of working in our jail and prison system, including doing a lot of reentry work in a lot of the upstate prisons. And so a lot of the perspective that I bring to this work is kind of, not just about people who are innocent and who get targeted wrongfully through practices like stop and frisk, but the fact that our systems are completely unfair, right? And so regardless of if you are innocent of a crime that you are accused of, if you are guilty of a crime that you are convicted of, that all of those situations are still ones where people do have rights, right? And it's a matter of how we think our criminal justice system functions, and also how we think, people deserve to be treated in society, even if they make mistakes, and even if those mistakes are what we might think of as bad mistakes, right? The deportation system, the reason that we emphasize the deportation system is because we feel like the deportation system really just compounds a lot of the problems that we already have in the criminal justice system. So when we talk about people who are getting targeted by immigration and customs enforcement, right, ICE, those are the same communities, especially here in New York, that get targeted for practices like stop and frisk. And obviously people who go through the jail system, who go through the prison system, there are huge, huge problems that they have to deal with. Immigrants face all of those problems too, but at the end of the road, when they get out of jail or prison, they also don't have a chance to try to reintegrate, right? So there's no re-entry, basically, for immigrants. It means that they're basically, for the most part, getting deported. And deportation for them means that they are thousands of miles away, usually from their families, right? People who are identified for deportation, who live here in New York City, usually get sent to Texas, Alabama, Louisiana to fight out their cases, and with no lawyer, if you can't afford one, right? And not even contact with your family or information to help you fight your deportation case. So we were part of a lawsuit recently that revealed that more than 90% of people who get arrested by ICE lose their cases, right? And so it's a system that's fundamentally unfair, just like the criminal justice system, and you're subjecting immigrants to this double punishment, right, that only immigrants have to face. And so for us, it's a matter of, kind of at least recognizing that we are layering one unjust system onto another unjust system, and we have to do something about that. So I'll focus my comments on the program Secure Communities. So ESCOM, are people familiar with the program Secure Communities? Somewhat. Okay, so ESCOM is this program that ICE has been shopping around, and again, ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they're the main agency that is in charge of deporting immigrants. So ICE had kind of started this program of ESCOM to help it meet its deportation quota. So ICE has a quota of basically deporting 400,000 immigrants a year, and it can't do it unless it has a massive, basically a massive pot of people to help them deport immigrants, right? And that massive pot really comes from the criminal justice system. So what ESCOM does is that when you get fingerprinted at the police station, when you go through booking, those fingerprints now not only get sent to the FBI, but they also get sent to immigration, right? And so if immigration finds that there's a fingerprint match, if they think that you might be deportable, they'll come and sweep you up from the criminal justice system and then send you straight into deportation. So SCOM is a program that obviously works at booking, so this is even before you've kind of gone through the process of the criminal justice system that at least has a promise of being fair, even though I think in reality we all know that it works very differently. But SCOM is also not the only way that people get thrown into deportation. So here in New York we also have the distinction of housing the largest penal colony in the entire world, which is Rikers Island, right? And through Rikers for decades now, immigration officials have been stationed there Monday through Friday, and their sole job is to try to look for immigrants that they can deport, right? So they try to interview immigrants, they look through their databases. Rikers is totally complicit in this. They actually give ICE access to these databases, and then ICE comes pick people up after Rikers too. So it's been this whole history. So even though, you know, in many ways New York has been known to immigrants as a sanctuary city because we have this don't ask, don't tell policy, all bets are off once there's a suspicion that you have there's some kind of criminal activity, right? So that means if you've been arrested by the police, if you are in Rikers, all of that means that, you know, we can ask about your immigration status. You don't necessarily have to answer, but immigration will ask, the police will ask, corrections will ask, and they'll use that information to try to see if you're deportable. So when we talk about who's deportable, I guess just by a show of hands, who here thinks that people who are undocumented can be deported? People who came in illegally, people who don't have any status here? Okay, yeah, they're like kind of the most prominent group that we think of when we talk about who can be deported. What about somebody who has had a green card and has lived here for 30 years? Can that person be deported? Yeah, right? And usually those people are deported because they have a criminal conviction, and sometimes those are really minor criminal convictions, like if you jump a turnstile and you get a 1-year sentence, that makes you automatically deportable, right? With basically no chance to fight your deportation. And what if you have American kids who are born here, and even if they're really sick, can you be deported? Yeah, right? And can kids be deported? Yeah, right? So we're basically talking about every kind of immigrant that you can think of who is not right now a US citizen can be deported. And these are